All right, guys, welcome to week 4. This week we're going to be starting our actual development. So in the previous week, we did some pseudocode. We started to flesh out our ideas for the projects for the features in our project. And we also set up our project as well. So we learned how to use source control. We actually got our project going. We configured some of the packaging settings and etc. So now what we want to do, now that we're in week 4, is we're going to start to approach a playable prototype as soon as possible. So we've got our minimum viable product. The very first thing that we're going to aim to, we're going to have our very first goalpost as a playable prototype in 2 weeks' time. It's going to be very basic, but we'll go into the details of that in just a second. The reason that we want to get a playable prototype is because of this point here, which is that iteration is the key to good games and a good dev cycle. So how that works is we develop something, we develop a prototype, we play test it, whether that's by ourselves or we get feedback from somebody else. We watch other people play it. Watching other people play it is the best form of feedback, usually when you're in the same room with them, so that you can watch the game, you can watch their reactions, you can talk to them, you can ask them questions, they can ask you questions. That's the best way to get feedback from a game, and it's the best thing for your game to do that as soon as possible. So you can get feedback from watching them play, you can get feedback from them, the things that they tell you, but then of course you obviously form your own conclusions about things that they've said. Say for example, games are very subjective things, and say for example just because somebody complains about one thing or doesn't like a feature doesn't mean that it's a bad feature, and it doesn't mean that it's not your intended experience as well. Say your game is difficult for example, and say somebody has a bad time playing it, that could be the experience that you want them to have. There's this interesting game, this is sort of a bit of a tangent, but I think it's Drakengard something rather, where it's known for being like an unpleasant game to play, because the intention of the game is to make it senselessly sort of violent, where it's like you get to the end of the game and you're just mechanically killing things for experience, but like it's all just so meaningless, and the game deliberately plays into that trope. So maybe you can push the boundaries of what a game is, and you can do things that players don't expect, and that's art. It's like there's so many ways that you can, there's so many different types of experiences that you can just give somebody through a game, and so this is why it's important to form your own conclusions about the feedback that you get. Just because somebody doesn't like something doesn't mean that it shouldn't be in the game, or just because they have an emotional response to something or struggle with something, or even if they like something, if they say that they like something that you're just like I don't want that in there, like that's for you to decide. And obviously you also get feedback from the things that they don't comment on as well. Like if somebody plays your game and doesn't notice something, that's also a form of feedback. It's like a reverse sort of feedback by omission. So that this is all good to know. It's good to get these tests happening early, because then you can reality check as often as possible, and you can start to address problems early that otherwise might only arise later on when it's much too late and your game is like scheduled to release. So we get feedback, we fix bugs, make changes, add content, and then repeat. We loop and loop and loop around like this, infinity. Get the prototype done as soon as possible, package, playtest, iterate. So with that said, our very first thing that we're going to try and do is get a playable prototype done as soon as possible. And the reason why is because games take longer than you think. Unexpected things arise in playtesting, confused players, bugs. You might get new ideas from watching them play. There might be forgotten requirements, things that are essential that you forgot to add in development, but then became obvious when you went to playtest it. You were like, oh fuck, like this portal's broken, or like, the game doesn't go back to the menu after you beat the game, or like shit like that. Or maybe you forgot options, graphics options. Maybe you forgot to have a way for the player to exit the game, like via the escape key or via a pause menu or something. And so issues can also arise during packaging if you're not prepared. So there are engine bugs. Like oh my god, man, like I've had so many issues with blueprint structures, like the variable type, where I've had to do like weeks of troubleshooting just to package my game because of some fucking engine bug that I had no idea about until I went to package my game, and then it was like, haha, here's a bunch of errors, like you didn't do anything wrong, but the engine's like not happy, and so now you need to spend weeks troubleshooting this problem before you can actually package a playable build. Like, you can't even get a build out there because the engine won't let it. I've had problems with behavior trees, where behavior trees have caused packaging problems. You know, it's good to address this stuff early, because then you can more easily track down what caused it, because you've made recent changes to your project that you can be like, okay, it wasn't this, oh, it must be this. And then B, you've also got the exit strategy as well. Like, if you can regularly package, you know, it's good because you've always got a game there that people can play, and then you can get feedback. So yeah, and on the right here we've got a picture of the copied city from Nier Automata, and as you can see, it's all just white. It's blocked out. They deliberately did this environment stylized like this. Like, this is a part of the game. It's meant to be bland like that. But, you know, this might be like how your game looks in the beginning. Just, we want to get a playable prototype. It doesn't have to be pretty, but it needs to be playable. And so, yeah, this is your task. Complete an MVP playable prototype by the end of week 5, which is next week. So assuming you're watching this video at the start of the week, you've got 2 weeks basically to do a prototype. And that's not to add time pressure, but it's just to say, well, get clear on what's important. So this point here, capture the feeling essence of what makes your game special. In this prototype, we're not trying to do a lot of content. We're not trying to make a full game. We're not trying to go crazy on graphics options and other features, polished graphics, environments, UI, performance. Don't worry about any of that. Focus on what captures the feeling essence of what makes your game special, and have it playable as a packaged game. So, for example, when you open Super Mario 64, the first thing that you're presented with is this garden at the front of the castle. And the designers from Nintendo, they talk about this is just, they wanted Mario's controls to be fun just in their own right. So even if you didn't have the rest of the game, if you didn't have the quests, the game is still fun because Mario is fun to control, basically. And so the first thing that you experience when you get in this game is this sort of open area. You can jump around, there's plenty of space, you can slide on the hills, you can climb the trees, jump out of the trees, and that's fun. So an environment like that is sort of what we mean when we talk about a playable prototype. How can you create a playpen, basically, which is the word that I've got here? Just create a playpen that the players can play around in. Maybe there's a game loop, maybe there's not. Just what's something that you can play that captures the essence of the game? And so then we start to ask, well, what's the essence? So you could do a playpen like that, or maybe your essence is something like this. So this is Super Mario 64 as well, but this is like a hack or something, like a mod, where you can see we've got some freaky purple shit. It's like a liminal sort of space, a little bit like Dream Core. There's some like some of that like distortion, that color distortion going on. Maybe the unique essence of your game is the atmosphere. And so, you know, if you wanted to go for a creepy atmosphere like this, then maybe your first playable prototype doesn't have any of the abilities, or maybe very minimal abilities, but nails the fucking essence of like, holy shit, it's like, this is scary, or like, this is interesting. What is it that you want to have the player experience? What's the emotion that you want them to get? Another way to think of it is sort of like a vertical slice. Like, it doesn't have to be fully functional, but what can you present in a few weeks that sort of lays that like foundation and is a window into what your game could potentially be and is playable, so that you can get feedback. That's what we want to do by the end of next week. So 2 weeks spent on that. Okay, so now we've talked about our playable prototype and we've made some plans for the playable prototype. This is a very good time to talk about to preemptively talk about some tips for staying sane, basically, for development. We're sort of getting to the point now. We've laid the foundation where we've got our vision, we've got our plans, we've done some blueprinting, we've got our MVP, and we've got our project ready, and we're starting to program. Like this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where a lot of games are abandoned, because shit can get hard quite quick, and if you're not sure what to expect, and you don't know how to take care of yourself and understand like what's normal and how to deal with the problems that come up, this can be the time when the games crash. And you run out of motivation or you burn out and or the project gets overwhelming and etc etc. And so here are some of my tips that help me stay sane when I develop. Very important. So game dev is long and arduous. You knew that. Balance and health are critical. Balance is a good point because what it means to be balanced varies from person to person and from project to project and from time to time. Sometimes you need to work more, sometimes you need to work less, sometimes you've got the inspiration and should act on it, sometimes you need more quiet than usual, you know. It all depends on how you feel. And so lessons about scope can only be learned from experience, etc. Yeah, you knew all that. And so here on the right, we've got a picture of the long, arduous journey of game development. So here are some tips. Simpler is better. Keep it simple, stupid. And like I said, like you can only learn this from experience, but here are some tips. You know, you'll learn these as you go. Keep it simple, stupid. Stay stupid. So meaning like, there's this saying that God favors fools and babies, or something like that. Babies and fools. And if you're not a baby, then you got to be a fool, or some shit like that. But basically, the idea is that like being sort of foolish and like childlike and not worrying so much is sort of a great way to approach your projects. Not getting so caught up in like this whole AI will solve everything kind of thing, meaning like sometimes you don't need more technology to solve your problems. You don't need things to be more complicated. You don't need to be more effective. You don't need to be better. You don't need to learn new things. Sometimes what you need is to just return to the basics, go back to what's simple, do something a bit stupid, right? Like just be a bit dumb, be a bit basic. Like nature has already solved everything. Like it's you know, it's funny and it's a cliche and like whatever, but we've evolved for like billions of years or millions of years, and we've got all this natural wisdom that's on board, and it's like we know how to play games, we know how to play. Play isn't a new thing. Like you don't need crazy technology to know how to play. And so sometimes if you get stressed, you know, just return to the basics. Good to keep in mind. Nintendo's good at this. Their games are always very like, I think they can be quite accessible. They use often minimal like HUD elements, minimal complexity. They're great at doing simple games, simple control options, menus and things. I like to look to them as like a good sort of role model for this, like keeping things simple, keeping them basic, keeping them fun. And then of course, feelings are your compass. Follow what brings you to life. Eustress versus distress. This is interesting. So that point I made about balance earlier. Sometimes being in balance means being under stress, and stress can actually be good, but there's an interesting distinction between what I've called her eustress and what is distress. Eustress is the kind of stress that makes you feel alive, where it's like you're working hard, maybe you're getting up early, you might be a little bit sleep deprived, and you're just going at it. You know, you're under stress, but you're loving it. It's like you're in that flow state. Like if you've ever seen the diagrams of flow state sort of exists in the top right corner of a graph where you're challenged, but you have confidence in your skills, and it's you end up in this place where you're meaningfully challenged, and then you enter this beautiful state of mind where you become so immersed in what you're doing that you lose track of time. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But basically that's a healthy kind of stress, because it's like you're doing work that's challenging, and it's just challenging enough to really draw you in so that you don't have the room to focus on anything else. And so it can often be quite exhausting, but it's a very exhilarating experience, and that's a positive feeling to follow. So stress can be good like that, but distress, on the other hand, this is the kind of nasty stress that makes you feel tired, it makes you feel sick, it makes you feel worried, it makes you feel burnt out. And that's the type of stress that kills a project. If you feel stressed and you're not enjoying it, then, you know, you want to return to the compass of your feelings. How can you get back to that feeling of flow where you're loving what you're doing? And so that's the next point. Be open to change. Is as you go and you find out which things are enjoyable, you want to be able to change your minimum viable product, change your plans, and readjust to the things that are working with your new knowledge now. Because as you develop, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to continue to pick up new tools, you're going to get more realistic expectations, and so your plans are going to change. So be open to change. Ditch your old fucking MVPs. This is something that has been critical for me. Like, often what happens is I write my MVP, I do my best to try and achieve it, it snowballs, it gets too big, it sprawls out of control, I get burned out, I quit, I take months off, and then I come back to that MVP, realize I don't actually want to do it, which is this eustress versus distress. It's making me distressed, and so I delete the whole fucking thing and I write a new one. And that cycle of like death and rebirth, basically coming back with a clean mind, a clear head, that helps you reassess what's important. It helps you focus on the simple things, what actually matters, and then from there you can actually take the project in a new direction and actually get it finished, and it'll be better than it was before, because now you've got the wisdom that comes with a clear head. You've got the benefit of a fresh set of eyes. And then the last point, so seriousness is a disease. That's sort of with the stay stupid idea. Games are meant to be fun, and you know, if you take it too seriously, then like, what are you doing? You know, like, it's meant to be a fun field, and games are meant to be fun to play. So have fun developing, and your games will be fun to play. That's how I think about it. Some other tips about staying sane: ride the waves. So inspiration is perishable. This is a good point, and it sort of ties in with the eustress and distress. If you've got the energy to develop, then develop. The inspiration is perishable line, that comes from a book called Rework by, I can't remember the names of the authors, but basically you can get a week's worth of work done in a day or in a weekend if you're really on the beat and you're really focused and you're really engaged. And so when you fall into those states of flow, just roll with them. And that's when the law of inertia comes in. Inertia just means objects in motion tend to stay in motion. So there's a real magic to momentum, is if you can consistently get in that routine of like working each day and doing the things that you love, it becomes very easy to maintain that waves, and you can get wave after wave after wave, just like this picture here. And then of course, this is actually a very important point as well to keep in the back of your mind, is to regularly get to those presentable and packaged states while on those waves. Before you finish one of your inspirational bursts, you want to try and get your package to a playable state so that it's tied up, it's got a little ribbon on it, your code is commented, and you know how everything works, and then you can take a break. It's very difficult to try and do all of that stuff after taking a break because your mind is reset. So you want to make all the documentation that you need to make so that it's easy to return to the project, and do that while you're still in the flow. It's like when I'm painting, for example, I do a little bit of painting sometimes. And when I get in the flow and all the paints are still wet on the canvas, it's very easy to manipulate it to put it into a good place that I want it to set, and then I can pick it up again the next day and then start again. But if I sort of leave it in a half-baked state and then have to start it again, I have to sort of basically get the whole thing like kind of wet again before I can begin to manipulate it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's good to get to that presentable state while you're on that wave, basically. So, and the last point here is move on. So there's a quote, I don't know if it's like song lyrics by Tupac or something, but it's like sometimes you've just got to leave the pieces on the floor and move the fuck on, basically. Like, you can't put them back together, you just got to leave them on the floor and move on. And the same is true with your game development. Sometimes you got to ditch your plans, dude, because they're just corrupt and they're stressing you out. Delete them and then start again. All of these points, they're good to keep in the back of your mind as you develop. And you know, maybe you can revisit this video on week 8 or something, or week 9, and you find yourself getting stressed because I forget these even when I'm developing, and I need to remind myself that, you know, it's okay to just leave the pieces on the floor sometimes. You don't have to finish everything. Sometimes you just have to let yourself be heartbroken, basically. You know, grieve your project, grieve the idea that you had for it, and just move on. So this other thing about trading vision for reality. As you learn to develop, you'll become aware of more limitations about your project, and that's a good thing, because as you become aware of limitations, that's a sign that your project is becoming real. It's becoming like manifest as a physical game. It's not just in your head anymore, it's a real game. And so that's a good thing. But that can come with grief, because as your game becomes more real, the vision of it and all the hopes and the dreams that came with it that didn't get made, they begin to die. And so you can feel grief, you can feel loss, you can feel a bit of depression. But that's part of the process, and that's not a sign that something's gone wrong. That's actually a sign that you've made good progress, believe it or not. And so this applies to single features in the games, but it also applies to the games as a whole. So sometimes you need to just ditch a whole game and start a new project, you know. And it doesn't mean the game was a waste of time. It just means that you've outgrown it. Basically, it means that you've learned enough to be able to move on. And so here's some other things that I do for health. I like to go on a massive walk every day. I don't do this long every single day, but I do go for a walk every day because walking, it's good low intensity movement. There's research that suggests that we came from ancestors who walked like 20k a day or something like that. I can't remember how much exactly, but the idea is that our physiology and our brain has evolved to function optimally with the blood flow that comes with walking. And so when we're not walking, we don't actually have full capacity, brain capacity. So this is good to remember. And walking, it also, when you're out, the ideas and the inspiration, they come to you as you mull over the problems that you've got. And if you've got your phone there, you can take notes in your phone while you're out for a walk. Great tool. And it's also, this is symbolically significant too. So when you're walking, it's like your mind's wandering and you're just putting one step in front of the other, especially if it's a long walk. It's just one step in front of the other, again and again and again. And that's exactly what we need to do in game development. Is sometimes you let your mind wander and just keep going. Just what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? So walking like that can help you stay in motion with your game development. Meditation is a great tool that I use. So just here, I've written weeding the garden / cutting the rope / clearing the cobwebs. When you're thinking a lot about your game, it's very easy to get lost in thought and not think clearly. So there's a great quote by Nikola Tesla. He was a great inventor, founded the electric motor, and he would say that it's most of the academics at his time, they would think deeply but not clearly. And so this is what you've got to watch out for, is thinking deeply about technical problems. It's very easy to get lost in the details of how you're going to program a mechanic and then lose your judgment about the big picture of your game. Like maybe you don't even need that mechanic, for example. Maybe you can just cut that feature. And the other thing about meditation is you can notice how you're actually feeling. When you've got some quiet time during the day, you can accurately reassess, like, am I heading in the right direction? How do I actually feel about this project? What is the content that I actually want to make? What am I enjoying? What am I not enjoying? All those questions can be hard to ask if you're constantly on the rat wheel, just constantly at your computer, constantly programming like a monkey. You need that quiet time in order to reflect so that you can think clearly and then change your course. And this is, I can't understate how important this is, because this makes or breaks a project, the capacity to think clearly. If you get lost in the weeds and the technicalities of your project and fixing bugs and programming features, and you're not thinking on that big picture level about the emotion that you want to convey through the experience, that's why we started with the emotion at the beginning, then it's very easy to get lost on things that don't actually matter, become distressed, and then never actually finish the game, or alternatively finish a game that it isn't true to the vision, and it just has a bunch of random features that aren't actually what you wanted to make, but you developed because you're in the habit of it, or you felt like you had to show up at the PC and work, but you weren't actually with a clear head. So very, very, very important. And so just here, I just want to introduce the 4 doctors. This is by a bloke called Paul Chek. He's an alternative health practitioner. He says the things that you need to be healthy are Dr. Diet, eating good food, Dr. Movement, which is the walking, Dr. Quiet, which is meditation, you need time to pause and reflect, and then Dr. Happy, so you need other things to be happy about in your life. And if you hit those 4 points, then you'll be fine. And I also like to see a therapist. A good therapist has changed my life, so being able to talk through the things that are difficult makes a world of difference. And so this is a picture here about the Buddha here as Mr. Suck. And he's just thought of a really good meme while he's meditating. This is what happens when you meditate, is that you have insights, you have flashes of like a revelation when you're exercising your Dr. Quiet. It's like in that empty space where you're clearing your mind, you're not verbalizing to yourself inside your head. It's like in that state of openness, solutions to problems can come to you, and you can get glimpses of what you should do for your project. It's like you suddenly just have an insight. It's like, oh, I didn't need that mechanic. Oh, I could do this. Oh, this is the solution to a problem. Very powerful tool. All right, other things, I'm just going to quickly blitz through these. So social reinforcement and encouragement. people see your game differently to you, and it can be very encouraging if you share it with the right people. So share it in the server, share it with us, share the things that you're struggling with if you want feedback, and that can help a lot, because it can be very easy to get stuck thinking about the wrong things, and other people can bring an outside perspective and get you out of your problem. Socialization with other things that aren't game develop related. So staying cooped up is counterproductive. It's good to just talk shit and forget about work. Great tool that I struggle with this with this sometimes, and whenever I break out of my workaholism, this is the thing that does it, and always brings me back feeling more energized and alive. Engage in other creative habits. So this is good to keep the inspiration flowing. I like to play piano. I like to do martial arts as well. Anything that moves your body or involves music, I think, is really fantastic. So here are some examples: music, dance, sports, singing, cleaning, blah 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 blah. I like to do gardening as well, so that's sort of repetitive, rote and a rhythmic thing, which can take your mind off of your things, or you can let your mind wander while you're sort of just just returning to your body. Returning to your body is a great thing to do when your head's all clouded and off in space. And then journaling. So every morning I have a handwritten journal that I like to write about the things that are happening in my life, and by writing about them and venting my emotions, and trying to just understand it, is that I can sort of weave a story around what's happening, and that helps me recontextualize the problems that I've got in my life. This is a very underrated tool as well. And here's a quote that I love, which is, humans aren't made of cells, they're made of stories. Basically, we live in stories, and the story you tell yourself about your game development can change the way that your body responds to it. It can change the whole way that you approach it. Like when we were talking earlier about eustress versus distress, it's like the response in your body is sort of the same. It's like a nervous system activation, but the difference between feeling like you're under distress and the feeling of being like thrilled and alive is basically the story. Really, it's like the physical reaction is like mostly the same, but it's like your perspective on what's happening is different, and that makes the world of difference. And so if you can weave stories around what's happening in your game development, the troubles that you're having, and sort of understand it, then that's a great tool for staying afloat. And so just the last thing, diet's very subjective, so take this with a grain of salt, but for me, I struggled with chronic fatigue for a long time, and the thing that fixed it for me was I went and saw a naturopath who did a bunch of tests on me and got me on some medication and things, but got me on some diet with some chicken meat broth, basically nutrient dense food with chicken liver and some other things as well, like eggs was something that he suggested. And I've just put the recipe here because this is what I eat quite a lot, and this has made a very real difference to my ability to show up on the computer and work. And without this, I was basically unable to function. So personally, I avoid caffeine. That's just a personal thing. I don't even really need that there. Everybody's different. But yeah, I think diet and nutrition is a very important thing, and that's just something to consider if you find yourself struggling to focus, that maybe food's got something to do with it, because it did for me. How often to work? No right or wrong answer. It's good to keep momentum. It's good to have Dr. Quiet. Personally, I max out at about 4 to 5 hours of cognitively demanding work. After about 5 hours of work on the computer, it's like my brain can't do anything new. And so that's it. But, up to you. Everybody's different. I try to take at least one day off a week, just for Dr. Quiet. And then obviously, like, everybody's got different routines and responsibilities and things like that. And so if you're working full time, obviously it's going to make, you're going to have less time for game development than somebody like me, or somebody who's unemployed, I guess also like me, who has all the time in the world. And so, you might need to adjust your approach depending on how often you've got to work, and how much time you've got available to work is going to change throughout the duration of the course as well. And so it's good to reassess as you go. And so maybe you need to use more pre-made assets, maybe you need to reduce the scope of your project. And just lastly, so before we get into the horseman, we're going to talk about flow state. So what is flow state? I talked about this briefly already. Losing track of time. Losing your sense of self / merging with the work. When you're so in the flow that you forget about everything else. You have enhanced intuition, meaning that you intuitively know what to do next. It's like the next step just comes to you. You don't have to think about it. You're just programming one thing. The next thing comes. You do that. You do that. You do that. In the flow. One thing leads to another. You're flowing down a river. And you get a sensation of being a witness to the things that you're doing rather than having to do it. This is the state that you want to aim for. And whatever work puts you in this state of mind, this is going to be... I talked at the start about the sailboat versus the rowboat. This is your sail. Rather than manually rowing and like squeezing that sponge so that you get every last drop out of your body, aim for this. Aim for the flow state. Aim for what puts you into that state where you lose track of time, where you lose all sense of everything else going on and you just merge with the task at hand. And that's gonna make you do good work. It's gonna make you stay incredibly focused. So not only will you be able to put more hours in, but your hours will be worth twice as much as if you were just rowing the boat manually and not really in it, because you're going to be more focused. So this is your compass, which I've written literally just here. This is your compass. Prioritize the work that puts you into flow, and that's going to carry you through the course of your development. So that's it for the tips on staying sane. Next we're going to do the horsemen, the pitfalls. Alright guys, this is the last segment for this week. We've just talked about staying sane. Now we're going to just go over some of the common pitfalls. It's good to be aware of these earlier rather than later, so that you can keep a watch out as you notice these start to creep in when you get into the development. So I call them the horsemen, not because there's 4, but because there's more than that. But the first one is fear, so paralysis by analysis / the fear of doing it wrong. I've said this a million times, there's no right or wrong way to do the game development. You just need to figure it out, basically. You just do your best with what you know, and as you create more, you get more confidence. And so you just have to start. And so the second point, wasting time on things that isn't important. So this is one of the ones that leads to burnout, is basically when you're afraid of what people are going to say. So I like this picture up here, this meme of like everybody just looking at you like, what the fuck? It's like, this is a common fear that we often experience as a teenager and as kids, where we might have some traumatic memories of being like, ostracized by our peers, or feeling ashamed of something that we did, and we carry those like feelings in our body, right? Like there's that saying that the body keeps the score. And when we do something vulnerable, like share our game with the world, it's like these fears come back to us. And so if we are too focused on sharing our stuff to the world too early, for example, and we carry this fear in the back of our mind, then we might be tempted to spend excessive amounts of time on things that aren't actually important. So for example, like if we're worried about what people are going to say on Reddit about our fucking project, it's like we might never publish it because we'll be worried, oh my god, like my graphics don't look as good as this person's, or I haven't done this system. Are they going to think I'm a bad programmer? Am I just a fucking like washed up hack, or like am I just so new at this? Like what right do I have to share? Like what response am I going to get? It's like all these thoughts about like people's opinions, and all of that can bleed into your work, and you can spend a lot of time actually polishing things just because you're afraid of what people are going to think about your game, rather than because they actually matter, or they matter to you. And so you can waste immense amount of time on shit that doesn't actually improve your game if you're not conscious of the fears that you've got, and about being worried about what people are going to say. So that's something to be aware of, is just how the opinions of other people affect what you develop. And so here are some other points. So over concern with performance. This is another thing. Like I've had people criticize my games for low performance as well, like prototypes of my games. And it's like if you take that seriously, it's just not helpful, because performance is a good thing to consider, but it's something you can tidy up later on, and you can use the profiling tool. But one of the biggest things that I commonly see like posts about this on Reddit is just like people are just always worried about performance, and they're worried about best practices. And it's like everybody wants to do something perfectly, and they're obsessed about systems, like having a system for everything, and making sure that all your assets and your blueprints are in the right place, and that you're not doing stuff on tick, and that you don't have too many actors in the scene, and that your graphics are all set right, and that your frame rate is absolutely fucking optimized like through the roof. And like it can be important, like if that's what you want and that's what your game is about, like having the best specs and things. But you know, as long as you're getting the frame rate that you want, all that extra optimization doesn't actually matter. And so over concern with performance it leads to this sort of paralysis by analysis. It's another fear thing where like you don't actually do any work on your game because you're always trying to optimize it, or you put off doing a certain asset or a certain part of your game because you're worried, oh, what if it's not optimal? What if that leads to tech debt down the line? What if there's a better way to do it? Like, I don't know if there's a better way to do it. Well, should I find a better way to do it first, or should I just make it? All of these questions, this is mental labor, and it's exhausting. And it might sound silly to be concerned with these things, but these are the sorts of things that when you think about them on a day-to-day basis, and when they sort of seep into every blueprint that you're trying to make, it's like you can end up feeling exhausted before you've even done anything. And so this is something to watch out for, over concern with performance. And what I like to do is I just make the game first, fix it later. If I notice something dips the FPS, I try to fix it. And the thing is like, you can learn from project to project as well. And if you do a game in 12 weeks and you notice that your performance is tanking and you don't know what to do about it, like maybe you just cop that on the chin, and the next project you do your system differently. Like maybe it's too much to try and fix in your previous project, and that's fine. Like you just have to learn as you go, right? Anyway, obsession with systems and excessive documentation. Not everything needs a powerful system. Sometimes a hack is enough. This is important for indie developers. Sometimes you can fake the result. You don't have to have a crazy system for everything. And excessive and premature polish. So I've got this picture on the right here of it's like a torn canvas, but what it makes me think of is like sometimes when you're painting, is if you get caught on some detail and you get frustrated with how it is, so you repaint it and you repaint it and you repaint it until the fucking canvas tears. It's like, is that helpful? Like, does that improve the project? Does obsession with polish and perfectionism and, you know, the details and the appearance, like, does it actually help your game? And sometimes it does, but sometimes it can be too fucking much. And so you've got to become conscious of these things in yourself. It's like, when is enough? And when am I just gonna like move the fuck on and just leave this how it is and just accept that, okay, it's maybe not how I wanted it, but I need to focus on other things so that I don't repaint the same fucking thing and just make a mess and end up tearing a hole in my canvas. That's something to watch out for. A, because you can ruin your project by focusing on the wrong shit, and you end up doing all this detailed work that doesn't actually improve the experience. Number one, because you're not thinking clearly. And number two, like, you won't actually finish the fucking painting if you're always obsessed with polishing. So, you know, be very wary of excessive and premature polishing, especially on the things that are irrelevant to the feeling. Like, if your goal is to sincerely finish a game, you know, in order to do that, you need to focus your energy on the things that matter to produce the emotional response that you want. So again, it's about judgment and how you spend your time. Fatigue and self-doubt. Game development is a long process, like I've said before, and when we are tired, we are conquered by ideas that we conquered. When we are tired, we are attacked by ideas that we conquered long ago. This is very true, and as you start to develop and you get fatigued, as you start to doubt your project, self-doubt can start to seep in. You can start to not see it clearly. You can start to think, fuck, am I just dumb? Like, am I just not that good of a developer? I've still got this and this and this and this to do. Maybe I was delusional to start this in the beginning. Is this too much to do? Like, you know, this picture up on the right here, this is how you feel when you start the game. It's like the whole fucking universe is inside your brain. Everything's full of potential. It all makes sense. And you feel like you can do it. And then some point around, you know, a few weeks in or a few months in or maybe a few years in, this is what you look like. You look down here. It's like you've got no brain. You're drooling from the mouth and you're just like... you don't know what to do, right? It's like you start to doubt your project. It feels like shit and you've got no brain power to work through it. And so fatigue is very important to be aware of, and self-doubt comes with fatigue. It's like a twin. You always begin to doubt yourself when you're tired, and when you restore yourself and the fatigue is gone, your confidence comes back. And so here are some solutions for what to do when you start to experience this. One is slow down and go to Dr. Quiet, which we talked about earlier. Have that time to reflect and replenish do something with your body rather than with your head, and take some time. Like maybe you just need time to recover from the fatigue. Do something about game development, take your mind off it. Something nothing to do with game development. Solution 2, you can also keep moving and don't give the doubt time to sink in. This can actually be helpful as well. Like if you're starting to doubt yourself, and sometimes the right response is to actually remedy that self-doubt by just continuing to work. It's like, no, I'm not going to let this stop me. Like, no, I'm not going to get caught up worrying about this. I'm not going to start to question myself. I'm just going to keep developing. And then by continuing to develop, having small wins, like, doing things that build your confidence, it's like you can build that momentum and then regain the confidence in yourself. This is very, very, very important. And then of course you can also talk to somebody you trust. So if you're feeling self-doubt, just talk to somebody and tell them how you're feeling. Tell someone in the server that you're feeling burnt out, and just maybe somebody else. Like I'll share my experience. Like, Jesus Christ, like I feel burnt out and doubt myself like all the time. It's like a constant battle that I'm struggling with, and just knowing that that's normal, I think, and having that validated, I think can help you work through it. Because once you become aware that, self-doubt is just like, it's not necessarily real, it's just an experience that I'm having, then you can see it for what it is and get past it. So now, technical overwhelm / stuckness / the cloud. This is sort of dovetails with fatigue, but basically the points here are not all problems are worth solving. And I've got this picture of, this is called the Hydra, and this is a mythical beast where every time a head is cut off the Hydra, it's like 2 more grow back, basically. And sometimes you can end up on this rat wheel when you're developing, where it's like you're trying to fix stuff, and it's like if you're desperate and not thinking clearly, everything that you try to fix is like an intervention which causes more problems than it fixes. It just fucks everything up. And so you can't necessarily solve every problem by working harder. A, because sometimes you make a mess if you don't know what you're doing, and B, you've only got limited amounts of energy. You've only got limited amount of time. And sometimes you just need to prioritize your energy. It's like sometimes you just literally don't have the time or energy to watch the tutorials to troubleshoot some bug. And so, maybe you just need to like abandon the feature. And then that helps you get through this feeling of stuckness, and then you can work on something else. So the alternative is you can work on something else to rebuild your momentum. Not every problem is worth solving. Not every problem needs to be solved. Sometimes just leave the pieces on the floor, move the fuck on. Easier said than done, but very important nonetheless. And so scope creep, we talked about that in a previous video, but basically you want to build an exit strategy and a playable game early, keep packaging regularly, and playtesting. And then feeling overwhelmed is an early warning sign of an abandoned project, so that's just good to notice. When you start to feel overwhelmed, reassess your approach, ditch your old plans, reassess. Games always take longer than you expect, even when you factor this in, and just be ruthless with your MVP. You already know all of that, but just remember it. Sharing with the wrong people. So this is a very important one. This little picture down here, this little sapling, it's like, this is what your project is like in the beginning, and if you share it with the wrong people, it can be very easy to suffer like creative damage or like artistic sort of harm, and you can start to doubt yourself very early, and your project can just be stunted and shut short. You need to protect your projects in the beginning when you're just starting to find yourself. Like maybe you're exploring some experimental ideas, and if you share that with the wrong people, they're going to criticize it. They're not going to see it how you see it. They're not going to see the vision that you've got for it, and so they're going to pick it apart. They're going to say a bunch of shit that doesn't matter, or they might not even mean it. Like sometimes you can share stuff with a friend of yours and they'll ask you a question like, oh, like how are you gonna, like when are you gonna publish it, or like have you thought about this, or have you thought about this, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, no, I haven't thought about that. I haven't thought about how I'm gonna publish it. Oh my god, should I be thinking about that instead? Like, am I like off track, or like and so like sort of the point is sharing with the wrong people and getting feedback too early when you still need to do some work to flesh out your vision a little bit can be counterproductive. It's not always good to seek feedback. Sometimes you need to focus on your own feeling and what your own vision, and then spend the time in that before you share it with other people, and to build confidence by sharing it with the right people first. So sharing publicly, people project their insecurities on you. They're going to pick out problems with your project that they judge themselves for in their project. That's very important to know. What people say about your project isn't necessarily something that's wrong with your project. It's not to say you can't learn from it. You can learn from it. But oftentimes people will just see that you've, like, for example, like maybe you use pre-made assets for your levels, and they'll be like, oh, your project's dog shit because it's just an asset flip. And they're completely oblivious to the fact that you've done a whole blueprint system, months and months and months of work, you know, building a whole thing of gameplay. They don't see that because from their little perspective, it's like they're looking at your project through their goggles and their values, which is the assets. And they say, oh, free assets, you're a bad developer. Whereas they can't even see the work that went into the blueprints, for example, or the game systems. Like, they can't even conceive of it, and, you know, vice versa. So people project their insecurities onto you. Be aware of that. And this is quite an insidious one, is that self-doubt is actually taught in game dev education. I went to game development school for a little bit, and I quickly learned in there that I wasn't going to learn anything there that I couldn't just learn online. It was a much slower paced environment, and there were a lot of good things about it. But one of the things that the teachers seemed to do is that they seemed to think it was their job to hammer in this idea of scope creep and, like, basically be like, your game's too big, you're not good enough to do that, you're not good enough to do that, reassess the plan, like, you're gonna fail, like, think smaller, you're not that experienced, blah 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 blah. That's like the default that they teach, because game development is hard, and so people think, oh well, you know, if we constantly warn people that it's hard, then they'll actually succeed in their games. But I think the shadow side of that is that it instills massive self-doubt and low self-esteem in developers. And so I've met students as well at game development events, like in Melbourne and things, where I've told them about a project for my game, and instantly the look on their face, they're like, oh, that's a big game, like, you know, are you sure? That kind of thing. Like, and so if you're not careful, when you talk about your game to people, they're going to project their insecurities onto you. And just be aware of that. Like, it's not necessarily a problem with them, although if they're rude about it, then it's a problem with them. Like, fuck that. But just be aware that other people's perspective of your game isn't necessarily a reflection of what your game actually is. And it's one thing to know that intellectually, and then it's another thing when it actually happens and people criticize your game. You actually do start to doubt yourself. And so it's good to protect it in those early stages. This is very important. People will compare you to AAA games. People will judge you for the wrong criteria, like I said about the assets and the blueprints and things. Safeguard your sanity by protecting your creative work while it and you are vulnerable. And of course, you can use the Discord. So share your work in the Discord server. We're going to have a list of rules in there to make sure that it is a safe space, and that you're not going to get unsolicited feedback if you don't want it. If you want feedback and you want suggestions and things like that, you can explicitly ask for it. But by default, it's a safe space where you can share your work, you can experience encouragement, you can have people witness your journey, you can share your struggles, and etc. And yeah, that's going to be probably the best resource to start with, unless you've got, you have friends that are in your, or family in your life that love and respect your games, and they're going to, that they're going to appreciate it, and that they're going to respect it, and they're going to be helpful. So you want to go with people that you trust. My thing's running out of battery, we better wrap this up. We're nearly there. So technical issues, they're inevitable. So bugs, crashes, corrupt assets, your project's not opening, PC problems, data loss, etc. Blue screens, maybe you drop your laptop, shit like that. Use GitHub backups. So I showed you how to do that in week 3. That's very helpful to be able to roll back. You can salvage your assets from that. You can also use the forums online. There's links to all of this stuff. The Unreal Source Discord as well. That's going to be in the resources thing at the end of the slideshow. Ask for help, post questions on there, and people are usually quite helpful, and usually people have had a problem similar to you before, so just search it. And for your hardware issues, find a local expert. If you're good with computers, maybe you can fix it yourself, but for me, it's like I'm a game developer, man. Like, I don't know much about computers, and when my computer breaks, like it's so much easier for me to just take it to somebody who knows what they're doing, find somebody with good ratings, like a good local reputation, and just take it to them, and trust that they'll charge you reasonably for it, and then you can just take that off your mind and just hand it over. So that's good to know. And then the last point is life crisis. So sometimes shit just happens, and your game needs to either go on hold, or maybe you need to double down and work to carry it through. But tough life events happen. There's nothing you can do about it necessarily. Like, all you can do is just do your best. There's no right or wrong way to handle it. Just be aware that there's more that goes into a game than just the technical elements of the game itself, and sometimes you need to seek support in your life. You're a human being at the end of the day. You need people to support you. You need your needs met, like you need shelter, connection to people who care, food, health, like all these sorts of things, and all of that is critical to how you develop. You can't develop we can't talk about developing a game without acknowledging that there's the rest of your life that goes into it. And so there's many other things that often need to be maybe they need to be taken care of before your game can come to fruition, and that's okay. That's all part of the journey. So we're just about to wrap this up. Long video. This has been a hard week, so congratulations on making it through to the end. But we're really getting into the grit of it now, and I think we've covered a lot of the theory and things now. So now that you've got a head full of ideas, the rest of it is going to be basically staying the course and communicating with the community so we can help you through it, and checking in with yourself so that you get through it, and just doing your best. So here are your tasks for the week. You're going to reorganize your minimum viable product and prioritize the features that you need for a playable prototype that captures the essence of your game. That's a mouthful, but you can review the slides about the playable prototype if you need to. Keep it reasonable. You've got to do this by the end of next week, so don't try and do too much. Don't exhaust yourself either, because it's just the start of the journey. And then get to work, so start developing them. It's not too early to start collecting screenshots and short clips. This is good. We'll talk more about devlogs later, but start collecting stuff now. Post them in the server if you want, completely optional, but start collecting stuff. Share in the Discord if you want, and just internalize the tips from Pitfalls and Staying Sane. Keep those on mind, keep those on hand, because they are going to become relevant as you go. And then just reflect. So as you're working, what gets you into flow state and how you can get more of that. All right, that's it for this week. You're doing really well. Just stay the course. We're almost a third of the way through now, so that's pretty intense. And yeah, have a good week.